Welcome to the Intentional Father Podcast, where us fathers parent our children, not by accident, but with intent. I'm your host, Aaron Stroman.
Welcome to Season 3, Episode 7. The Intentional Father. This entire season is dedicated to fathers going through divorce, being divorced. How do you navigate those waters? What do we do? What's some wisdom we can walk away with? And this episode, I think it's going to be the final episode of this season, but it's dedicated to understanding why your marriage fell apart. And when I say that, it may be easy to point at an affair, some infidelity and say, well, that's how it fell apart. But there's more. It goes beyond that. That was kind of the end symptom, but there are deeper issues that precede that. There's other experiences and behaviors and situations that came long before that. And so we want to take a look at the entirety of the relationship and start to evaluate, where was it good? Where was it bad? When was the beginning of the end? And we do this for a couple reasons. One, there's huge therapeutic benefit to understanding why your marriage fell apart. Part of that benefit is because you may have been accused of some things that simply were not true. My marriage fell apart. I was trying to figure out why. There was a woman in my life whom I was married to. It said it's all your fault, Aaron. You're a terrible husband for these reasons. You're a bad guy, and it made me feel horrible. Come to find out, those weren't necessarily true. There was some truth to them, but it certainly wasn't why the marriage fell apart. But you're going to be accused of things that you shouldn't own. So there's therapy in understanding why your marriage fell apart. There's also value in knowing why your marriage fell apart, so that it doesn't happen again should you choose to remarry. Because if you don't address those and discover those issues why your marriage fell apart, it's very likely it'll just happen again. And if we don't learn from the past, we're going to repeat history. History is going to repeat itself, and we're going to end up in the same situation. Now, and of course you kind of wonder, like, what happened? How did this happen? Kind of like the counseling thing. I think it's really beneficial when you can go back and look, but have someone else help you, because they're going to see things that you don't see. And I have a couple recommendations. The first is going to be a book. I really went on a quest to discover, why did my marriage fall apart, and how do other marriages not fall apart? Because I was doing a lot of the right things. Clearly I wasn't doing all the right things, and it takes two. And so I'm not going to own something I don't need to own, but I do need to own what I should own. And I recommend the same for you. And I ran across this book, What Makes Love Last, by John Gottman. And if you're just listening to the podcast, not watching it, I'm holding it up. I actually went to the library and checked it out again just for this episode. I think the first time I was exposed to the content was an audiobook, and then I got the book and rented it and read it, and I've gone through it again. And the book title is What Makes Love Last. And the book answers the question, trust. And it's a huge collection of information on how relationships work. If you're not familiar with John Gottman or the Gottman Institute, must read for any relationship. Their resources are fantastic. I think the best out there when it comes to marriage resources. So pick those up. But as I was reading this book, What Makes Love Last, it had my relationship pegged to a T, and I was able to see like 18 months prior to the divorce, so I was able to go, oh my goodness, that happened 18 months ago. No wonder things have led to this point. And I was just oblivious to them. Some I was guilty of myself, some I wasn't. Now, again, I don't want to get into yucky details or anything, but I didn't want a divorce. That was not, that was the other person in the party who was desiring that. And, if things were up to me, I wouldn't be divorced. But but even with that, and if that's your situation, you still need to look in the mirror and go, okay, what did I contribute to the demise of this marriage? Because there's something. And one of the huge things that I realized I contributed was I did not engage in healthy conflict. Now, I would engage in conflict, especially in the earlier part of our marriage. And we went to marriage counseling, and my family origin is like our conflict was always composed, self-controlled, nice, easy, steady tone of voice. The woman I married, her origin, family of origin, conflict style was very loud, aggressive, yelling, the volume turned up, way different than what I was used to. And so, so we had to go to counseling to figure that out. And with that, I discovered like when she would enter into conflict, okay, I would go there and meet her there. And, she kept going up and up and up. And I met her there. Eventually, just meeting her where her level of conflict was and her volume, it would crush her. And then I was a bad guy, even though I was, you can do the right thing and still do the wrong thing. Like, then all of a sudden I'm the bad guy for crushing her. And I'm like, I was just matching your intensity. That wasn't the appropriate way to engage in conflict. And what happened over the years for me was, there'd be conflict. I'd meet her. She'd go up here and I'd say, okay. And I would back off for the sake of peace. I just want peace in the family. But what that was really doing was enabling the person who got loudest to have their own way. I wasn't staying engaged in healthy conflict. That's what I needed to own. This book helped me realize that. I realized that about myself, and I still have the same tendency, but it's something I have to work on. I don't think I would have ever realized that had I not gone outside of myself to search for what I contributed to the demise of my own marriage. It's kind of, it's not pleasant to admit that in a public forum, but it's true. It's true. And I need to admit that, and I need to own it, and I need to realize it so I don't continue to behave that way in a future marriage, in a future work setting or present work setting, in my current family. It's like all relationships take healthy conflict. They require healthy conflict. Okay, now I know that. I got to work on engaging in it even when it's not comfortable. Your reason might be something different than mine. And that's not my only reason, but I want to use that as an example to say that, even though I didn't want the divorce, I still contributed something to the divorce. And I have to realize that and own it. Now, as a part of this self-reflection, I need to be writing down, where can I grow as a person? I can set some goals. How do I improve on this? How do I get the coaching I need? How do I get the counseling I need to be a better person? Also, I think every man who wants to get remarried needs to write a list of attributes that he's looking for in a future spouse. What do I want my future spouse to embody when it comes to morals, character, integrity, things like that? And when you can do that, especially after looking inward, looking external, discovering how your marriage fell apart and why it fell apart, that's going to help you formulate that list of what you're looking for in another woman. Now, what's the benefit of this? When you can make that list by yourself, emotion-free, hormone-free, which is really important. You go, okay, I want a woman who displays these qualities, has these characteristics, has these spiritual goals or whatever. And I made my list is kind of two sections. I have the non-negotiables and then I have preferences. Non-negotiables are that I don't negotiate on them. Preferences, I'll negotiate a little on them, but not all of them, right? So there's a little flex there. That helps me identify my future spouse. And if a woman just isn't adding up to who I want to marry, then I can look at my list. It's my point of reference and go, she's not the one for me. And that's really important. And I mentioned the hormone thing. Man, she may be beautiful. And guys, once we see a beautiful woman, we're blinded to everything else. That's why we need that list to look at. Man, she's beautiful. And that's probably on the list. But her character's not there. I don't want to spend the rest of my life with her. I'm not going to get divorced again. Set standards for yourself. And going through the process of researching why your marriage ended and owning it is going to help create those standards and reinforce those so you don't end up in the same situation. Again, divorce for the most part is horrible. It's not the worst thing that happens, but it's certainly not the best thing that happens. And if you've been through it once, you don't want to go through it again. And this is a very practical way that you can avoid going through divorce again. Don't do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not. I'd rather be single than get married and get divorced a second time. But it takes intentional steps like this to ensure that happens. So, again, I'll drop the Amazon link for this book, What Makes Love Last by John Gottman. I'll drop that in the show notes. And I would recommend this to every guy, married or not. Great book to have. If you're still married, this will only preserve your marriage and make it better. So everyone should read that book. But I hope this is helpful. Hope it's encouraging. We're going to do one more episode. So the next episode is going to be just a biblical look on divorce, countering what the common language and perspective of divorce is in the church. Because if you're a Christian dude, you're going to feel horrible about getting a divorce. I'm going to bring you some encouragement and make some pretty bold and strong statements in our next episode, which will be the final episode. So I hope to see you there. But until then, God bless.